Hey folks, Pastor Troy here, Raven Ministries International Training Center and the pastor of the Harvest Center Church right here in the New Orleans area. Finishing up my daily run out here and just stopping as I was thinking about some things as I was making my way around the track in this beautiful, cool weather in southeast Louisiana. It was interesting in Luke 17:20, I believe is the reference on that. Jesus was inquired by the Pharisees, religious-minded people. Now, these weren't ignorant people. These are people obviously schooled in the law, very familiarity with the law of Moses and the writings of the prophets. And so they're asking him a question relating to the coming kingdom. And Jesus makes the point, he says, there's going to be people coming and say, here it is or there it is. And he said, don't listen to them. He said, because the kingdom doesn't come with observation, but it comes, or it is, within you. My kingdom cometh not with observation, or the word literally means ocular evidence, or something that can be seen, but the kingdom is within you. I think about that in relationship to the introduction of John the Baptist, his formal public ministry introduction in Matthew 3:1. It says, John came preaching out of that wilderness Judea, saying, repent, for the kingdom is at hand, or the kingdom is attainable. The kingdom is within reach. And, Jesus obviously preached that same message in Matthew 4:17. Throughout the New Testament, you see that message of repentance, and I've talked about that here in this forum a number of times. But the whole issue that I'm thinking about in relationship to that message is the manifestation of the kingdom. As a minister and a ministry, I've been walking with Jesus faithfully for 40 years, been pastoring for nearly 35 years, and none of it's really been, I guess you could say, your typical ministry, or what you'd say traditional ministry, as far as, pastor gets up and preaches a good message and blesses people and, hey, see you next week, and that type of thing, does a little hospital visitation. Ours has already been characterized, obviously a little bit different, just some of the environments that we've been thrown into, in relationship to kind of get out in the marketplace, feeling compelled, and, just the urgency and the mandate that God has put upon us through Raven Ministries. And, Raven stands for Restoring a Vision, Evangelizing Nation. That's the acronym for that. So we're all about restoring vision, or discipling people, and then evangelizing the nation, go out and do the ministry of reconciliation. So our ministry has always kind of been known by that. We go out strategically and deliberately feeding the hungry. We go out on a weekly basis. We're ministering to the elderly, minister to the orphans. We're going into youth detention centers, going to college campuses. Obviously, kind of our flagship ministry, most people know, is Raven Street Church right there on Bourbon Street. We're out there a couple times a week. And so, we're out in the community doing those type of things. So we're doing a lot of work as far as touching people's lives. We do that. But I think about the issue of John's message coupled with what Jesus said, and what Paul the Apostle said in Ephesians. He said, we're saved by grace through faith. It's not of works, so that no one would ever be able to boast, but we're created unto good works. In other words, our salvation is not about what we do, and I never think that. I don't do things in order to get some brownie points with Jesus. I do things because I love Him and I want other people to know Him. And so it's not an issue of, hey, we're doing more than somebody else or whatever else, because there's always somebody that's going to do more, And so it's not a issue of measuring against somebody else. It's an issue of measuring against what God has told me to do and being obedient unto Him. So I don't want anybody ever think that just because I do some things that may get some attention versus maybe somebody that's kind of functioning in anonymity, that I have a greater calling or what. I don't believe that whatsoever. I have to do what God's told me to do. But I say all that in regard to the thinking about the kingdom. If the kingdom is within us, Jesus gave implored us. He said, don't lay up for yourself treasures here on earth, where moth and dust can corrupt and thieves can break through and steal. In other words, don't do things with the heart and idea of what can I build, whether bigger church or more followers on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever else. Don't do those things with that in mind. And he said, but rather lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where moth and dust cannot corrupt, thieves cannot break through and steal, because where your treasure is, your heart is also. Folks, where's your kingdom at? And that's really an important question to ask everyone, but specifically we that are called to the ministries that pastor or have a desire to pastor. What are you building? And I think about when Jesus, his disciples ask him, teach us to pray. And he says within that prayer, he says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Folks, listen, when I get to heaven, when that's manifested, I'm not going to be doing Taco Tuesday homeless outreach. I'm not going to be going and, leading teams or sending teams into prisons or to the old folks' homes. I'm not going to be doing that. So the kingdom is not temporary. The kingdom is inside of us. And so we need to think in terms of, if I'm building the kingdom, if I'm kingdom-minded, I'm always focused on eternal things. It's so big of a trap to fall into the success-oriented thinking of ministry, that I've got to build something, I've got to have a name on it, I've got to be recognized, me, my time, my thing, my. Wherein Jesus said of that same John that introduced that idea of the kingdom, he said, no greater man born of woman than John the Baptist. Well, John's message was, I've got to decrease so he can increase. And so the increase of Jesus will typically result in the decrease of self. And so the more he's seen, the less evident that we are. And folks, listen, that ought to be our end goal. And it's interesting. I think about in relationship to ministry and expanding the kingdom. Well, expanding the kingdom isn't doing more things. Expanding the kingdom is involving more people in a relationship with Jesus. And obviously the first rung on that ladder that we climb is introducing to people through the preaching of the gospel, and deliberately. And I'm not talking about here in these channels. Yeah, some people see this that never heard the gospel, but most people that will like my page or will subscribe to my videos are people that really typically agree with me already, and or have some level of relationship, and I may just be motivating in a certain area that there's a deficiency or whatever else. I get that. But really, expanding the kingdom is taking the message where people don't know what we know, that people have not been exposed to that gospel. And I see that, and more and more, preaching on Bourbon Street for nearly 30 years, run into so many people that aren't subscribed to a Christian podcast or not obviously joined the church, and you talk to them, and they really have no really formal understanding, no basic understanding of who Jesus is or what the message of the cross was. They've never been brought to an exposure of the kingdom. And so when he says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, we need to think, if I'm building something that's simply earthly, that it really doesn't represent a kingdom mindset and a kingdom mentality. And so my question, I guess, would be, what are we building for? What are we striving for? Is it really about the kingdom, or is it about our comfort? And so many times, even in ministry and in churches, you go to church growth seminars and all these things, and really they kind of function off of, what do people want? Well, the kingdom isn't about what people want. The kingdom is about what people need. And so what is the most effective thing for the kingdom? Not for you, but how is the kingdom being reached more and more? Well, sometimes there's a greater impact for the kingdom by us getting out of the way. Sometimes it's by us being quiet, by us taking what we have and investing in someone else. And I find that more so all the time. I'm kind of the Bourbon Street preacher who doesn't necessarily quote unquote preach on Bourbon Street every single week. Now I minister to people one-on-one a lot, but I'm not always the guy that's on the microphone. I can anytime I want to, obviously, but my contribution is raising up and discipling other people to be able to do things that 35 years ago, I didn't know how to do effectively, and seeing them just get a command of the word and a passion to preach into their generation. Most of the kids out there, people out there on the streets, are my kids or my grandkids' age at this point. And so raising up another generation, that's really being a kingdom. So I get out of the way. I want to promote, and I want to invest in. I want to reproduce something. And I say this in regard to ministry. Ministry needs to be something, if it's kingdom-oriented, reproducible and sustainable over time. What am I doing something? What is the legacy for the kingdom that I'm living? What is the basis for Jesus that I'm living in that? So I want to challenge you today. Do you have a kingdom mindset? Especially you that are called or involved in ministry. Are you building for the kingdom, or are you building for yourself? Are you building something that sustains you? Or are you building something that sustains the message of the gospel in the kingdom? Folks, because listen, at the end of the day, that's what he's going to be looking for. He's going to be looking for his kingdom inside of us, because where our treasure is, what kingdom we treasure, is where our heart's going to be. Anyway, this is my two and two today. Thank you so much for taking the time. This is PT, Raven Ministries International Training Center, and the Harvest Center Church. I love you, and we'll see you next time. God bless.